Thank you very much, my dear friend Mr. Sraf, dear frontline regulator Dr. Haldia, my dear colleague full-time member Mr. Shukla, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. I thank CII for the opportunity to be with you today. The theme of this session is assessing the 5 years of insolvency and bankruptcy code, the way forward. It has two sub-themes, namely the assessment and the way forward. Ideally, the way forward should emerge from the assessment. Let me start with the assessment first. I believe that the thrust of the assessment is neither the code nor its journey. It is an assessment of the outcome of the implementation of the code in the last 5 years. Sorry. So many of us, whether a stakeholder, an analyst, a journalist, or an academician, have a view, like Mr. Mohan mentioned, change in credit culture, empowerment of operational creditors. Mr. Haldia also mentioned quite a few. But these are based on our own perception of a transaction or a process flow or a design feature or an implementation issue, a deviation from expectation, comparison with the erstwhile regimes, etc., depending on our exposure, experience, understanding, interests, and ideological inclination. We tend to present such views as our assessment. It is like the famous parable of the 7 blind men and an elephant, where each of the 7 blind men describes an elephant based on his limited experience. None of the blind men has a complete view of the elephant. To that extent, most assessments in circulation today do not present a complete picture. Every economic reform, including insolvency reform, somewhat has recast the rules of the game, of course, in the greater interest of the economy. As such, it affects the rights and interests of stakeholders. Some stand to lose, others may gain as compared to the old order. It is unlikely that the losers or the gainers, who are generally blinded by self-interest, will make a holistic and objective assessment of the outcome. They tend to cite isolated examples to buttress their perspectives. A beneficiary of the old order may cite the likes of Kotaringa Minerals Limited or Orchid Healthcare Private Limited to cry foul of the insolvency reform. He may claim that liquidation of these two companies under the code realized precious little for the creditors as against their claims of 1,000 crores of rupees. But he would not say that these companies had absolutely no assets when they entered the insolvency proceedings. So interested parties have a tendency to present their perspective as assessment, which may not reflect the correct position and may even present a distorted picture and malign the reforms. We therefore need a framework for comprehensive and objective assessment. This is extremely important to stay on course, to assess performance, to identify what contributes positively or adversely to outcome, and make prompt course corrections. For example, we intuitively believe that the outcome is better if stakeholders start resolution process in early days of stress and close it expeditiously. The assessment would indicate whether the outcome is good, and if not, is it because the stakeholders did not initiate process early? If they did not initiate, is it because they did not have enough incentive to do so? This will trigger a search for measures to improve the process and consequently the outcome. So a systematic assessment would indicate to what extent the process design, conduct and capability of the COC, conduct and capability of the insolvency professional, disposal and quality of disposal by NCLT, promptitude and quality of regulations by IBBI. These factors, how they impacted the outcome and what can be done to improve them. If we do not have any such scientific framework for assessment, market uses any parameter that is conveniently available. IBBI newsletter dishes out the realization figures, and that becomes the sole basis for assessment because it is readily available. Let me give an example from stock market where I have spent long years. There is a tendency to use stock index to reflect the health of the stock market and strength of its institution. It is because index is scientifically constructed, professionally maintained, readily available, while no such metrics is available that reflects the health of the stock market. Though index, in fact, it reflects, it is a barometer of the economy or what has happened and what did not happen. It does not reflect the quality of stock market except to a very limited extent. We have seen stock index doubling or being half, coming down to 50% in a year. But this does not mean that the quality of stock market has improved 100% or reduced to 50%. Similarly, realization of 100% or 0% for creditors in the resolution process does not anywhere reflect the working of the code, but people use it as a default option. We have to move away from default option. Therefore, I actually compliment CII to focusing on the assessment. It is necessary to have a tailor-made framework for objective assessment of the working of the code if we wish to move out from the subjective views which are being presented as assessment. The first step to assessment is determination of what is to be assessed. This requires us to understand the code and its purpose. For reasons sometimes under its control or at other times beyond control, a company experiences stress, unable to repay the debt in time. It has assets less than the claims against it. So in such a situation, creditors will rush to recover their claims before others do, triggering a run on the company's assets. They would recover on a first come, first served basis till the assets of the company are exhausted, bleeding the company to death. This is a negative sum game. Contrary to this, IBC provides for reorganization. The long title begins that it is a law for reorganization that prevents the value of a value reducing run on the company. It provides for reorganization by two ways. First, by rescue of the company through a resolution plan, failing which by closure of a company through liquidation. Sorry. The long title reads reorganization or insolvency resolution for certain objectives. It does not say in the long title that resolution means rescue of the plan, rescue of the company. If it is rescuable, it should be rescued. It allows the market to make the choice. It follows a market process. Market makes the choice. It enables the market to make the choice. Market usually chooses to rescue a company if its business is viable or close it if it is unviable. In case of a rescue, companies reorganize as a going concern. The claims of creditors are restructured. In case of closure, the assets are sold. Proceeds are distributed to creditors immediately as per the priority rule. And IBC entrusts the responsibility of reorganization to financial creditors as they have the capability and willingness to restructure their claims. More importantly, there is a synergy of interest of the company and of the financial creditors, and this makes it a positive sum game. I am laboring this to say that the object of the code, its sole object is reorganization. Reorganization, of course, has several benefits, like it promotes entrepreneurship, improves credit availability, maximizes the value of the assets of the company, balances the interest of stakeholders, etc. But these are not objectives. The objective is only one, it is a reorganization. Some of you may be familiar with the Tinbergen rule. This rule named after the first Nobel laureate in economic sciences, Dan Tinbergen. He stipulates a basic principle of policy efficacy that a policy must not have more than one objective. there must be at least one policy for each target. There can be more than one policy to achieve one target, but having one policy to achieve more than one target is troublesome. It is not easy to kill more than one bird with one stone when the birds are flying in different directions. So therefore, there can be many tools for reorganization. In fact, there are. One may reorganize through RBI circular, the Companies Act, even outside any formal framework. Again, I am emphasizing that the only objective of the code is resolution. It is not, as some of us wish it to be, the panacea for all ills, and then assess the performance of the code in respect of so many other parameters which the code never intended to achieve. So the assessment should focus on the objective of the code. Now let me take you to some of the views which are being peddled as assessment. One view is that this IBC, about 3/4 of the companies are getting liquidated and only 1/4 are rescued. These people are watching only the end game, where they see that about 1800 cases or CIRPs have reached the finishing line. That is, they have ended up with resolution plan or liquidation. But please note that of the companies proceeding for liquidation, 3/4 were defunct to start with, and of the companies rescued, 1/3 were defunct. This means that 2/3 of the companies were defunct when they entered the IBC process. The companies ending up with liquidation had assets on average valued at about 6% of the outstanding claims. So if a company has been sick for years and its assets have depleted significantly, market is likely to liquidate it. Nevertheless, what matters is the value of the distressed assets rescued instead of the number of companies. In value terms, companies accounting for 70% of the stressed assets were rescued, while those accounting for 30% of stressed assets proceeded for liquidation. Now let's look at the universe of companies for which applications are filed for initiation of CIRP. The code is actually a system to address stress of a company. The credible threat of the CIRP that a company may change hands has redefined the debtor-creditor relationship. Today, as in the words of Supreme Court, defaulter's paradise is lost. A debtor makes all-out efforts to prevent stress. It resolves stress on its own when it is imminent much before it translates into a default. It makes all possible effort to settle default to prevent filing of an application. Even after application is filed, it tries hard to resolve stress to avoid admission. It continues efforts to resolve stress midway through settlement, review, mediation, withdrawal to avoid the consequence of CIRP. There are also examples of settlement with the approval of the apex court. Over 90% of them are closed midway, either before or after admission. So if you consider the entire universe of companies which have touched the NCLT or IBC for resolution, the percentage of companies proceeding for liquidation is almost negligible. And I am not even considering the resolutions happening outside IBC, but on account of IBC. Of course, I anticipate that post-disposal of pre-IBC legacy matters, as the relatively recent stress cases are dealt, liquidations will be less. In any case, it is not the code, it is the market that makes the choice for liquidation, and code is only an enabler. And let me also make it clear that liquidation per se is not all bad, particularly in case of unviable businesses. It is through liquidation that the resources sunk in the failed firms are released for more efficient uses in the economy, and that is the objective of the code, that is the resolution. If we can release the assets from Chakravyuha for productive uses, that serves the objective of the code. Another view that is presented as assessment is that IBC has turned out to be a tool for haircut. It is axiomatic that a company coming to IBC does not have adequate assets to repay all its creditors. companies which have been rescued through IBCs, let's say till June, they had assets valued on average at about 22% of the amount due to creditors. This means that the creditors were staring at a haircut of 78% to start with. The IBC not only rescued these companies, but also reduced the haircut to 61% for financial creditor. So the question actually is, why does IBC use zero haircut in one case and 100% in another? It depends on several factors, including the nature of business, business cycles, market sentiments, the marketing effort, business acumen of the committee of creditors. It, however, critically depends on at what stage of stress the company has entered IBC, as much as at what stage a patient has arrived in the hospital. If the patient is brought dead to hospital, the best hospital can do little. Further, haircut is typically we look at the amount of a realization in relation to amount of the claim. This is not the standard concept in finance, but this is the way we look at. So the amount of a realization often does not include, because we are comparing the realization as compared to claim. So the realization does not include the amount that would be realized from the equity holding post resolution, that will come through reversal of avoidance transactions, that would arise from insolvency resolution of guarantors. So if these are taken into account, the realization will be much more. Simultaneously, the amount of claim often includes NPA, which has been completely written off in many cases, and interest on such NPA, and it also includes the loan as well as a guarantee on such loans. So therefore, we have a figure of an inflated claims and a deflated, rather lower realizations. If we adjust for these, the haircut would appear much less. It is also appropriate, whether it is appropriate to see haircut in relation to the assets available on the ground or the claims of the creditors. The IBC market process offers a value in relation to what a company brings on the table and not what it owes to creditors. IBC maximizes the value of the assets at the commencement of the process, not of the assets which probably existed earlier. Since it is redeeming a part of the going concern surplus, rescue is realizing on average about 180% of the liquidation value of the existing assets, generating 80% bonus instead of haircut. So in addition to rescuing the company, IBC realizes of the available options for creditors, the highest in percentage terms. So we need to ask, are these figures of a realization, percentage of liquidation, are measures or assessment of the working of the code? That's why I emphasize the objective is resolution. Is it resolving the stress, whether by resolution or liquidation? And what has been the nature of outcome? Is it failing to rescue a viable company or failing to close an unviable one? At what cost it is doing it? In what time frame? Time frame, of course, we know. IBC promises time-bound resolution, pegs it at 330 days, including litigation time. But we have not been able to adhere to it. But as compared to the legislative intent, it is not good. But it is extremely good as compared to pre-IBC days. And there's, of course, tremendous scope to improve performance on this parameter. In terms of costs, I think we are doing quite good, about less than 1% of the liquidation value or 0.5% of the resolution value. So if we have a systematic assessment, it will throw out which are the areas we have to work and whether it is serving on the objective. Objective is rescue a viable farm, close an unviable farm. Unless you look at this parameter, we are not actually making an assessment. So we should develop a framework for assessment, a holistic, objective framework that assesses the working of the code and tracks its outcomes. It should look at 5-7 to my mind, but it can be deliberated. The market can come up with a better framework. To my mind, it should look at the growth, strength, and efficiency of the insolvency ecosystem, consisting IPs, registered valuers, RVOs, information utilities, adjudicating authority, appellate tribunal, IBBI, government, and courts. Similarly, it should look at the strength, efficacy, and efficiency of processes. All CIRP, liquidation, voluntary liquidation, pre-pack, resolution of personal guarantors, fresh start process, individual insolvency, bankruptcy. Similarly, it should also consider the growth and efficiency of markets, like the markets for interim finance, market for resolution plan, distress market, market for liquidation assets, market for insolvency services, along with the cost efficiency, information efficiency. These are what an economist looks at. We should also look at the impact on businesses in terms of cost of capital, capital structure, availability of credit, entrepreneurship, capacity utilization industry, creative destruction, competition, innovation. Of course, the behavioral changes, which may not be captured that easily by some numeric kind of things, but the changes, such changes, soft aspects of the debtors and creditors, trust of the creditors in debtors, the meritocratic lending, non-observable impact, humanitarian considerations, proactive impact, and finally, the overall impact of the code on employment and economic growth of the nation. We need to have such a comprehensive framework covering these aspects. Then only we will be able to identify the right course of action. Otherwise, it will be guided by opinions, intuitions, guesses. Now let me move to the second part, the way forward. As I told, ideally the assessment should show the way forward. But since we do not have a systematic or scientific assessment, as of today, we are living with, we have to do with the whatever we feel are subjective assessments. And that often turns out that what state should do, always demand that what the law should provide, law should change, state should do, IBBI should do, NCLT should do. But I think there's a lot more the way forward should be in the market. We do not have solutions for everything in the state machinery, and quite a bit. Many solutions we can find if the market makes an effort. And there's a tendency also today we have, there's already a demand for pre-packs to be available for large companies. Pre-packs has just been rolled out. It has hardly been used. We do not have any experience, but demand that we want for large companies. But what is available, this is not used yet. So let us eat what is on our plate and not ask for what is in another's plate. Similarly, when what happens if something is missing, COVID times when the filing of applications was prohibited, some thought everything was lost. Headlines told that entire code is suspended, as if entire code has been suspended. But it was only a minuscule part. Filing of applications of defaults in respect of COVID defaults was suspended. It did not suspend the applications in respect of defaults arising outside COVID, did not suspend the applications already filed and pending for addition, did not suspend ongoing corporate insolvency, corporate liquidation, voluntary. So many things were ongoing. But what was coming out was that as if everything has been withdrawn. Let me tell you a story to explain this point. Two school-going friends, they had a crazy idea. They rounded up 3 goats from the neighborhood and painted the numbers 1, 2, and 4 on their sides. They let these goats loose inside their school building. The next morning, when the authorities entered the school, they could smell something was wrong. They soon found 3 goats, but they were worried where was the goat number 3. They spent the rest of the day looking for the goat number 3, but they could never find simply because it did not exist. So for some of us, absence of something is always larger than the presence of many things. We always script that there's a delay at NCLT. But is NCLT creating a delay, or delay is contributed by each one of us? If the promoters do not cooperate with the resolution process, if a resolution applicant does not implement the plan, if a committee of creditors decide that we will decide who is a financial creditor or operational creditor, if every interested party files dozens of miscellaneous applications or IAs in every CIRP, what can the state capacity do? I don't think it is the intention that states should keep on expanding capacity to accommodate all these many of these are frivolous issues. So what I'm trying to say is that please try to find solution in the market rather than always asking the state to find a solution for a market problem. This is not to say that the state will take a backseat in IBC. It has not done. It has been in the forefront. It has taken recently, as someone mentioned, an exercise of reimagining IBC. It is having a series of interactions with different sets of stakeholders. The Standing Committee of the Finance has recently recommended several changes. The Insolvency Law Committee continuously reviews the implementation. So the work is on. There's a commitment. You see that there are, Mr. Shroff mentioned about the series of judgments from Supreme Court settling the jurisprudence, 6 amendments to the code in less than 5 years. The state is doing its best and also responsive to meet the needs. But market has also to come up, to rise to the occasion, and also say that what market can do as a way forward. CIRP is an orchestra where every constituent, adjudicating authority, IP, committee of creditor, erstwhile management, resolution applicant, everybody has a role. If any of them does not cooperate or resorts to active non-cooperation or malified actions, the process may not either conclude in time or may not yield the optimum outcome. CIRP could be completely frustrated if the successful resolution applicant does not implement the resolution plan after its approval by the adjudicating authority. So I believe that the best way forward is that the market participants, they effectively play their roles as envisaged in the code and not find out any excuse or not try to, like the committee of creditors, I gave the example, trying to decide who is a financial creditor, who is an operational creditor. That is the job of the insolvency professional, or if somebody is unhappy, can go to NCLT or NCLT. Not that committee of creditors can encroach this role from IPs. So all these things in the matter I am referring to, why there are several applications, several times going to NCLT, going to NCLT, who is creating the delay? Is it not a part of our way forward? All of us should be responsible and play as per the law. IBC is actually a market process. It's a tool in the hands of stakeholders to be used in the right time, right manner, right case. For example, they should use it in the early days of stress when the company's value is intact. Close the process quickly before value recedes further to minimize the possibility of liquidation or even avoid a haircut in the resolution plans. A corporate debt in stress needs immediate relief. If it remains longer in stress, higher is the loss of the value. Value depletes if resolution plan approval is delayed either at the COC or at the A. With passage of time, the possibility of a resolution of stress decreases or resolution plan yields a haircut. So most of the criticisms like the low realization, high incidence of liquidation, longer time, all these would be addressed to a large extent if the CIRP is initiated early and concluded faster, and this is maybe 60, 70, 80% of this is in the hands of the market participants. IBC aims at maximizing the value of the assets. If CIRP yields a higher value, the possibility of liquidation or haircut is less. But there are many ways. The law has given a kind of a threshold to the committee of creditors. 3 empowerments committee of creditors has. One is it is no more limited to do negotiation with the existing promoters. Entire globe is a market. Second is that it can have a resolution plan which can provide anything and everything. It defines the resolution plan which resolves insolvency of a CD as a going concern. Limitless possibilities of resolution, including restructuring by way of merger, amalgamation, It may entail a change of management, technology, product portfolio, acquisition of disposable assets, businesses, undertakings, restructuring organization, business model, ownership change, recasting strategy of turnaround. Anything and everything is possible. Regulation 37 of the CIP regulations provides an illustrative list of measures that resolution plan may provide. And recently, the Standing Committee on Finance has reiterated, it has felt that Section 37 should be in the code, it should not be in subordinate legislation. But how many resolution plans are making use of these options? Resolution plans are getting limited only to restructure the liability. That is the third reason why COC has been given power, is that the COC can give or take a haircut up to 100% for any stakeholder. So COC has been given so much of powers. So COC, which lays down the rules of the game through invitation resolution plans, is to envisage many possibilities of resolution which can enhance the value. The IBC provides for a clawback of value through avoidance transactions. If such transactions are also undone and lost value is deprived, the value of CD becomes higher. So insolvency professional is to identify every such transactions and not be stuck up because the COC is coming on the way that this avoidance transaction application should not be found out, or will not found the professional who will do this kind of detection. Several things is I just mentioned about COC. The problem with the corporate debtor is not less. So there are the company has to remain as a going concern. To ensure that it has to remain as a going concern, it requires the cooperation of the erstwhile management, even creditors and government agencies of some extent. So all these require the effort on the part of the stakeholders. Several measures can facilitate early commencement of a CIRP. So it gets delayed on account of a resistance. Quite often the admission gets delayed because the corporate debtor resists, sometimes on frivolous grounds. It is necessary to disincentivize such resistance. The Section 66(2) that holds the directors liable for the loss to the creditors that arise during the twilight June. So during this period, the director has an additional responsibility to exercise due diligence to minimize the potential loss to the creditors, and he is liable to make good such loss. If in every case this application is filed and this application is disposed of quickly, I don't think the CDs, the corporate debtors, they may not resist it. The admission can be faster if the authenticated information about default is available with the adjudicating authority. IBC envisages IU for this purpose. But it is necessary that the debtors and creditors must submit information, must authenticate information. Then only this process will be faster. The financial creditors, in fact, they hold the key to the fate of this CD. They take the decision whether to rescue it. They must understand the business. They must first take a call whether this is a viable business. Should we attempt to rescue it? If it is not viable, they may take the call in the very first meeting that we would like to liquidate it. There is no point in just wasting time. So they have to make a business decision quickly as to when to start, and after starting, the next step. And they must follow the decision, not try to influence the IP to do things which are not permissible. So there are several such things. I would think that the market can find out the solution. One thing is also the valuation. I think the work has been happening on the valuation of front. But two more submissions I would like to make. One is, as we know, India is the fastest growing $1 trillion economy. All vital statistics, such as the index for competitiveness, index for innovation, they have been improving over the years. In the face of competition and innovation, it's natural that some businesses will experience stress, and given the size of the economy and its growth potential, there will be a continuous flow of distressed assets into the market. The market should have enough depth so that there are enough resolution plans for every distressed asset. So it has to be an initiative of the market to promote a market for distressed assets. IBBI has done something asking the NESL, M. Johnson to come up with a platform. But it is the market becomes liquid only when the When there are many people like a stock market, millions and millions of people are willing to participate in stock market platform itself has no value. So the liquidity should come to the marketplace. The second aspect which Mr. Shroff mentioned quite often I have heard, that the resolvability of the companies. Code has shifted the focus of creditors from the possibility of a recovery to the possibility of a resolution in case of stress. It is easier to rescue a company if it is resolvable. The code may fail to rescue a company if it is not resolvable. Therefore, a company must remain resolvable all the time so that stress can be resolved. For example, Mr. Shroff always said that why can't a company always have a ready-made self-prospectus like thing, a ready-made information memorandum. In case the company gets into problem, one pulls it out and started the process quickly. Stress is likely to be resolved where the value is free from encumbrances. Value is visible to any discerning eye, easily realizable by any resolution applicant. It is resolvable if the promoters, directors, key manager, personnel, or company they have exercised due diligence and have systems in place whereby they have ensured that there is no avoidance transactions, preferential transactions. The market should actually prefer a resolvable company, should pay a premium. The creditors should prefer to extend loans to a company which is a resolvable. So these are the preferences the market has to develop. I would say that the way forward is that we have done the first half, we have actually leapfrogged with whatever capacity we had, but this is the time consolidation of a capacity building, improvement of conduct, and the right kind of incentives. Not that we have to ask somebody, please cooperate in this. We will get a direction from police or NCLT that you hand over the documents. So these things, if we are doing all these actually, and still asking that every solution is in the state or in the law, it does not work. So for me, the way forward is that the way forward is in the market. There should be a systematic assessment. That systematic assessment should throw out the way forward, and that way forward is in the market. Not at any time I am ignoring that. We have to work on, let's say, cross-border insolvency or group insolvency. So many other things are in pipeline. These things would happen, but market must also come up. This is all I wanted to say. Thank you. Thanks to CCI for giving me this.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sahu, for your illuminating comments. And I think it is one of your most erudite speeches that you have given in the recent past on the whole purpose of the IBC and the manner in which it can be really put into an implementable form with elimination of all the wasteful time that is spent on adjudicating matters which are not within the domain of several authorities.